In 1995, Jasmine Adams walked into a government office to apply for a passport. What she thought was a routine task would shatter everything she knew about herself. Who was she really? And why was the life she knew nothing but a lie? A clerk's simple question sent Jasmine into a spiral of confusion, leading to the discovery that the name she'd carried all her life was a fabrication. Her entire identity, crumbling under the weight of one question. But what was the truth? Who was she really? In this ordinary office visit, Jasmine's life is thrown into turmoil, and what follows will lead to a truth darker than anything she could have imagined. In one moment, her life would be turned upside down. A simple question would send her on a journey to uncover the darkest truth about who she really was. Before I begin, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. I'd love to know just how far this story's reaching. Jasmine stared blankly at the paperwork in front of her, her passport application, the one task that had seemed so simple just hours ago. But now everything was beginning to crumble. She'd filled in every section neatly and precisely, just like she had done with every official form before. Yet something wasn't right. Something about her records didn't match up. A simple question, "Where were you born?" had led her to a harsh truth. Her birth records didn't exist. Not in the system, not in any registry, no mention of her name, no trace of her birth in Brooklyn, New York. Nothing. The weight of the realization hit her like a wave. She wasn't who she thought she was. She wasn't even born in the United States. Her identity, her entire existence, was an illusion. Jasmine felt her pulse race. Her heart was thudding in her chest as panic crept in. She'd always felt secure, comfortably wrapped in the life she thought she knew. But now the rug had been pulled from under her. Everything she'd believed, everything she thought was true was starting to fall apart. Her birth, it didn't exist. Her family, they didn't exist on paper either. She couldn't even begin to understand what was happening. How could this be? How could her whole life be nothing more than a carefully constructed lie? The weight of the truth was suffocating. Jasmine was no longer just confused. She was terrified. Her mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of a life that suddenly didn't make sense. She needed answers, desperately. Her birth, the simple fact of it, how could it be erased? Her parents, the life she knew, how could it all be a mistake? A lie? There had to be an explanation, but there were no answers, only questions. Questions that dug deeper into the heart of her identity. What happened to her? Where had her past gone? Who was she really? Every question she asked seemed to lead to more confusion, more pain. But Jasmine refused to give up. She had to find out what had been hidden from her for so long. Her frustration grew with every dead end. Every time she tried to contact the proper authorities, she was met with silence. Every piece of paper she gathered seemed to add more doubt. Her life, which had always been so secure, was unraveling, and Jasmine felt powerless to stop it. Jasmine couldn't let go, couldn't stop searching, so she pushed forward, determined to uncover the truth. Hours of research, endless phone calls, and a deep dive into her past revealed something far more chilling than she ever imagined. She wasn't born in Brooklyn. She wasn't born in New York. She wasn't even born in the United States. She was born somewhere else, a place she never knew existed in her own life. She was taken, kidnapped. Jasmine's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't just lost. She was stolen, taken from her real family, from everything that was hers. At just 4 years old, she was ripped away from her life, her world, her family, and what followed was nothing but lies. She wasn't Jasmine Adams after all. Her name, her identity, everything had been taken from her. Her life was a fabrication. Jasmine stood frozen. The truth, this truth, was more horrific than she could have ever imagined. Her real family, the ones she had never known, had been searching for her for decades. 53 years, 5 decades, spent searching for a child who had been stolen in plain sight. But the discovery didn't end there. The deeper Jasmine dug, the more she realized. This wasn't just a case of a lost child. No, this was something far darker. Who had taken her? Who was responsible for ripping apart her family? And why? Jasmine's mind raced. The answers were out there, just beyond her reach, but the truth was more twisted than she could ever have imagined. And then, she uncovered the next piece of the puzzle. The person who took her had been someone she trusted, someone who had been close to her family. The horrifying truth. Jasmine's life had been stolen by someone she knew, but the answers were still slipping through her fingers. Where were they now? And could Jasmine find the courage to face the truth about who had taken her life away? Jasmine was about to confront the darkest, most painful truths of all, but the deeper she dug, the more terrifying her journey became. She had no idea just how far the web of lies stretched, or how deeply the betrayal went. The truth was closer than ever, but would it destroy her? And as Jasmine approached the final stages of her search, one haunting question echoed through her mind. Who had stolen her life? Before we continue with Jasmine's shocking journey, I want to take a moment to thank all of you amazing viewers who have been supporting the channel. Your engagement means the world to me, and it's because of you that these stories can continue to grow. Stories like Jasmine's take time and dedication to bring to life, and your support makes all the difference. Now, I want to know what you think. What would you do if you found out that everything you knew about your life was a lie? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read and reply to every single one. And if you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Let's keep this journey going. Your support helps me keep creating content like this. And if you want to be the first to know when I drop another shocking true crime story, make sure you hit that notification bell. All right, let's dive deeper into Jasmine's story because it's about to get even more intense. Stay tuned. Jasmine had been piecing together the puzzle of her life for days now. Bit by bit, the fragments were falling into place. But what she had learned was too much to absorb all at once. Her entire life, a life she had cherished, a life she thought was hers, had been stolen, and not by strangers. No, the person who had stolen Jasmine's life, who had taken her away from the family she loved, was someone she knew, someone she trusted. A family friend, a person she had grown up around, believing they were kind, caring, part of the fabric of her world. The horrifying truth unfolded before her, like peeling back the layers of a bitter onion. At just 4 years old, Jasmine was taken from the only home she'd ever known, but this was no ordinary kidnapping. Her captor wasn't some masked stranger lurking in the shadows. No, it was a trusted family friend who had come to her parents with a simple offer: a trip, a vacation, a promise. The plan seemed harmless enough, a break from the daily grind. But what Jasmine's parents never knew was that this vacation was only the beginning of a nightmare they would never wake up from. Jasmine's kidnapper took her to another country, far away from the people who loved her. They moved her across borders, across seas to Australia. And in the process, they changed everything about her life. They gave her a new name, a new identity. Everything she knew was erased, replaced with a lie. And as she grew up, the people around her, the people she trusted most, kept feeding her the same story. Her real family had abandoned her. Her real family didn't want her. Jasmine was told this story time and time again. It was the only explanation she had ever known. It was easier to believe, easier to swallow, than the thought that she had been stolen. And so she believed it. She accepted the story of abandonment, of rejection, and of a life that was not her own. But now that she had begun to dig into the truth, everything was beginning to shatter. As Jasmine pieced together the truth, her mind began to unravel. The emotional toll was unbearable. She had spent years, decades, believing she was unwanted, unloved, and now she was forced to confront the reality. Her life, her whole existence, had been a lie. The emotions swirled inside her like a storm: anger, disbelief, confusion, each wave crashing harder than the last. The weight of it all was too much to bear. Jasmine's heart ached as she recalled her childhood in Australia, the memories that now felt tainted, distorted. She had been raised by people who weren't her parents, but they weren't just strangers. They were the people who had stolen her life. In the flashbacks, she saw them, the couple who had raised her. They had kept her from the truth. They had isolated her, constantly telling her that her real family didn't want her. They made her believe she was unwanted, made her believe that her family had left her behind. And for years, she believed it. Now Jasmine had to process the pain of that betrayal. The people she had called parents, the people who had raised her, had stolen her childhood. They had taken away her identity, and with it, her sense of self. The search for answers. But Jasmine wasn't going to stop searching. Now that she knew the truth, she needed to understand it all. She needed to know who was responsible. She needed to know how they had stolen her life and why. And there was one more thing. Her real family, her biological family, the ones who had been looking for her all this time. For 53 years, they had been searching for her. They never stopped. Despite the years of grief, the heartbreak, the unanswered questions, Jasmine's heart broke as she realized the truth. Her family hadn't given up on her. They had never stopped loving her. But Jasmine wasn't the only one suffering. Her biological family had lived with the pain of her disappearance every single day. They had spent decades wondering where their daughter was, wondering if she was alive. The uncertainty, the grief. They had lived with it for 53 years, and now, Jasmine had the chance to bring them back together. But with each answer she uncovered, Jasmine realized there was still so much she didn't know. She had uncovered her true identity, but the story didn't end there. There were still so many unanswered questions. Who had taken her? Why? Where was her kidnapper now? Jasmine's mind raced with more questions than answers. The closer she got to the truth, the darker it became. Every clue she uncovered only led to more mysteries. Each step forward felt like a leap into the unknown. The truth was out there, but Jasmine wasn't sure she was ready for the full reality. And just when she thought she understood the scope of the deception, just when she thought she had it all figured out, the story took another unexpected turn. The pieces were finally falling into place. Jasmine had uncovered the unimaginable truth, but now she had to confront the question that had haunted her from the start. Who had stolen her life, and why had they done it? Was she ready to face the person who had destroyed everything? And what would happen when the final truth came to light? Jasmine was about to come face to face with the darkest chapter of her life. The truth was closer than ever, but it would change everything. Jasmine's heart raced as she held the letter in her hands. The envelope, worn and yellowed with age, had been buried deep within a stack of old papers she had recovered. The moment she tore it open, the contents inside hit her like a freight train. There in black and white was the final piece of the puzzle she had spent months searching for. Inside the letter, a message from her real family. A simple letter, yet it carried the weight of a lifetime. Her real name, the one she had been stolen from, her birth date, her place of origin. Everything she thought she knew had been shattered. Jasmine's hands trembled as she read the letter. A heartfelt plea from the parents who had never given up on finding their daughter. The words on the page slowly became clear, but the meaning behind them was far more profound. She wasn't the person she had known herself to be. She wasn't just a girl from Brooklyn. She was someone else entirely. The discovery hit her in waves, overwhelming and exhilarating. But it wasn't just the new name, the new birth date that shocked her. It was the realization that her real family had been searching for her, actively searching for her, since the day she was taken. They had never stopped looking. They had never given up. They had spent years trying to find their daughter, across borders, across continents, and their desperate search had never yielded results. For Jasmine, the weight of that discovery was overwhelming. A family who had been living in a fog of uncertainty for over 5 decades. And now at last, the connection was made. Her family knew. They knew she was alive, and they were still out there. But even more unsettling was the realization of what Jasmine had been told all these years. The lies she had lived with. The people who raised her had filled her head with a story. A story that made her believe that her real family didn't want her. But now she knew. The truth was much darker. Jasmine's mind spiraled as she thought back to her childhood. All those years, all those memories, shattered by one simple truth. She wasn't born in Brooklyn. She wasn't born to the people she thought were her parents. Jasmine now began to piece together the history she had been kept from. Her biological family living in England had been searching for her since she was 4 years old. They had contacted every authority, gone to every length, reached out to anyone who could help, but the system had failed them. Jasmine's birth had never been officially registered in the way it should have been. Her true identity had been hidden in plain sight, swept under a rug, and forgotten by the bureaucracy of the time. And for her real family, the pain was excruciating. Every day they lived with the same question. Where was their daughter? Where was Jasmine? The authorities had been slow, disorganized, and incapable of properly investigating the case in the early years. Jasmine's biological family had tried everything. Missing person reports were filed, news outlets were contacted, and posters were distributed, but no one could help them. Her parents in England never stopped hoping. They knew that one day they would find her. But as the years went by, the pain only grew more unbearable. The hope that she was out there somewhere slowly morphed into a relentless ache, an ache that never seemed to fade. Jasmine's mind drifted back in time as she recalled the moments before everything changed. The kidnapping didn't happen in the way most people would imagine, a dark figure snatching her away in the dead of night. No, this was something far more insidious. Her kidnappers were people she trusted, people she had known her whole life, a family friend, a familiar face in her childhood, someone her parents trusted deeply. The plot began with an invitation, a simple request. Let Jasmine join us on a vacation, a trip to Scotland. She'll enjoy it. It'll be good for her. At the time, Jasmine's parents thought it was a kind gesture, a trip that their young daughter would enjoy. They had no reason to suspect anything sinister. They packed her bags, kissed her goodbye, and sent her off, believing that she'd be home soon, full of stories of new adventures. But that trip never ended. Instead of returning Jasmine to her parents, the couple took her far away, first to France, then to New Zealand, and finally to Australia, where Jasmine grew up believing the people who raised her were her real family. As Jasmine came to understand, this wasn't just a kidnapping in the traditional sense. It was a careful, calculated deception, a vacation that never ended. Her real family had no idea where she was. They had no idea she had been taken. They were left with nothing but memories and unanswered questions. But the emotional toll on her parents was undeniable. The grief of wondering if she was alive, if she had been lost forever. Jasmine's mother and father, how had they survived the pain of not knowing where their daughter was? And yet, the trail to find her grew colder with every passing year. The pain of the unanswered questions. How long could one live with such uncertainty? Jasmine's biological family had never given up, but the truth had been elusive. No one had known where she was, and all these years later, the answers were just starting to fall into place. Jasmine had finally uncovered the heart-wrenching truth, but there was still one question that lingered in her mind. Who was behind this? Who had taken her away from her real family? And why? Jasmine's search for the answers was far from over. Now she had to face the person who had stolen her childhood, who had erased her true identity, and who had kept her from the family who had never stopped looking for her. The truth was out there, but it was more shocking than anything Jasmine could have imagined. Her life, the one she had known, was built on lies. The final piece of the puzzle was slipping into place, but the hardest part was yet to come. Who was the one who had stolen her life? And would she finally face them? The answers were within reach, but they were more painful than anything Jasmine could have prepared for. Can you imagine living with the thought that your child was taken away, not knowing if they were alive or dead? Jasmine's real family had been searching for her for decades, and now finally they have answers. How would you feel if you were them? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read and reply to every comment, and I'm eager to hear what you think about their journey. Jasmine sat alone, her mind racing with the truth that had come crashing down on her in waves. The weight of the discovery, the depth of the lies that had shaped her entire life, was suffocating. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. The world she had known, the life she had built, all of it seemed unreal now. Every memory, every moment she had cherished, felt like it belonged to someone else. Who was she? Who was the girl she had thought she was? Jasmine's head spun with confusion, anger, disbelief, and deep sorrow. She had spent 26 years believing that her parents had abandoned her. The idea that the people she thought were her parents had been lying to her was almost too much to bear. How could they do this to her? She had spent her entire life searching for a sense of belonging, trying to piece together the fragments of her history that never seemed to fit. Now she knew the truth. She had been stolen, taken from her real family, raised in a new country, in a world built on lies. The foundation of her entire identity had been erased. It was a bitter pill to swallow, no matter how much she tried to tell herself that this wasn't her fault. But even with the truth now uncovered, the emotional toll was devastating. Every part of her past felt like a mirage, a dream that had been torn apart. She closed her eyes, trying to block out the overwhelming flood of emotions. But it was impossible. For years, Jasmine had wondered why she never felt at home, why her roots didn't seem to grow deep into the earth. Now she understood. She had been living someone else's life. On the other side of the world, Jasmine's real family had been living a different kind of nightmare. For over 50 years, they had searched for their missing daughter, Jasmine. Their grief had never dissipated, and they had never stopped hoping that one day they would find her. Her mother had never stopped praying, never stopped holding on to the belief that Jasmine was still out there somewhere. Her father, his heart heavy with pain, had carried the burden of wondering if his daughter was alive, if she had suffered, or if she had been lost to him forever. Every year they posted flyers, contacted authorities, and even reached out to the media. Every year they hoped that someone, somewhere, would have the answers. But each year passed with no leads, no closure. The years blurred together, but the heartbreak never faded. Jasmine's siblings had grown up with the absence of their little sister, each of them carrying the silent weight of wondering where she was. They had grown older, but the ache in their hearts remained, unrelenting. And then, after all this time, they got the news. Jasmine was alive. It was hard to believe, but the evidence was there. The letters, the documents, the DNA tests, all leading back to Jasmine. Her real family had been looking for her, never giving up, never losing hope, but the truth still haunted them. They had no idea where she had been all this time. Increasing urgency. Jasmine's search had now become a race against time. The puzzle pieces were finally falling into place, but there was still so much to uncover. Her biological family had been found, and the realization that she was finally on the verge of reuniting with them left her breathless. But there was no time to waste. The authorities were now involved, investigating the timeline of her kidnapping, piecing together the events that had occurred over 5 decades ago. As Jasmine sifted through more evidence, photographs, records, even a few old letters, the pieces of her identity were finally coming together. The paperwork that had once felt so elusive now seemed like the key to unlocking everything. She was about to uncover everything, but there was still a deep fear inside her. Fear that she might not be ready for what would come next. Her real family, the parents who had never stopped searching, were waiting. They were just as eager to find their daughter as she was to find them. The urgency in Jasmine's heart grew. Every second counted now. She was finally close. The next steps could lead her to the family she had never known. But the reality of what that meant, of facing all the years of absence and grief, was overwhelming. With each passing day, Jasmine became more determined. She could no longer pretend that everything was normal. She couldn't continue to live a life based on lies. She had to know the truth. She had to find her family. The idea of meeting them, of stepping into their lives after 53 years of separation, was both thrilling and terrifying. What would they think of her? Would they even recognize her? What would it feel like to meet the family who had been searching for her, who had been living with the agony of not knowing for so many years? But Jasmine was resolute. She had to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Jasmine knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be pain, there would be anger, and there would be tears. But she had already spent years searching for answers, and now she was ready to take the next step. Her resolve was clear. She was ready to meet her biological family, to see them, to hear their stories, and to find out where she truly belonged. But as Jasmine prepared to take that step, one question kept lingering in her mind. Would she be able to meet her real family after all these years? How would she handle the truth of her stolen life? And most importantly, how would she come to terms with the family she had been denied for so long? The journey she was about to embark on would change everything. And it wasn't just about finding answers. It was about finally reclaiming the truth. The day had finally come, the day that would change everything. Jasmine stood outside the terminal, heart pounding in her chest, a mixture of excitement and fear coursing through her veins. She had flown across the world, crossing oceans, to meet the family she had never known. For 53 years, they had searched for her. Now it was her turn to search for them. She squinted her eyes as the airport's bustling noise faded into the background, her heart racing faster. Was this real? And then she saw them. Two women and a man, each holding a faded photograph, their faces uncertain, yet hopeful. They were standing in the crowd, scanning the sea of passengers. They were waiting for the girl they had lost so many years ago. In that moment, everything stopped. Time seemed to stretch as Jasmine's gaze locked with theirs. She didn't recognize them, but they recognized her. It was as if the universe had finally aligned. They began to run toward her, their steps frantic with hope, their faces filled with a joy that was both overwhelming and heartbreaking. And then the embrace. The moment where Jasmine's world shifted completely, the years of pain, of wondering, of not knowing, poured out in that single embrace. They held her like she was the last piece of a puzzle they had been searching for, piece by piece for decades. The tears flowed freely, both Jasmine's and her biological family's. Her mother, her real mother, held her tight, whispering her name over and over again. Jasmine, Jasmine, my baby. The grief, the loss, the disbelief, they were all there in that moment. Jasmine could feel the weight of it in her chest. She had spent her whole life searching for herself, and now, in an instant, her real family was here. They were holding her like she was the daughter they had never given up on. The tears didn't stop. It wasn't just the joy of the reunion. It was the culmination of so many years of loss. Jasmine's heart ached as she allowed herself to feel the love she had never truly known. But amid the joy, there was a sobering thought that still lingered in the air. Jasmine could feel it. The years had been stolen. Her childhood had been taken. The life she had lived, was it really hers? Could she ever fully heal from the trauma of what had happened to her? Her biological family's healing began in that moment. But it wasn't an easy road. There was so much to process, so much to unravel. Jasmine's parents, the people who had lost her, were finally reunited with their daughter. The relief in their eyes was undeniable, but so was the pain. They had missed so much. They had missed the moments when Jasmine needed them most, the school graduations, the birthdays, the small victories that parents longed for. The years spent searching for her had aged them. But they never stopped hoping. Every year, they prayed for this day, the day their daughter would come home. As Jasmine met them, the floodgates of grief opened wide. The pain of those lost years poured out in every hug, every word, every tear. The years of wondering, of not knowing, finally dissolved into something that felt like hope, like healing. But it wasn't going to be easy. No amount of hugs could undo the damage done. No amount of time could erase the trauma of the past. Jasmine's heart broke for them, but it also broke for herself. She had a new family, a family that loved her unconditionally, but she also had a past she would never get back. The truth about what happened to Jasmine was starting to come together. But there was one haunting question that still loomed large. Where was the woman who had stolen her life? The woman who had taken her all those years ago. The woman who had promised her a vacation and never returned her. Where was she now? Jasmine's mind raced. What had happened to her kidnapper? Had she disappeared into the shadows, leaving no trace behind? Or was there more to this story than Jasmine knew? The more Jasmine uncovered, the more she realized how much was left to discover. The woman who had taken her, what had become of her? Was she still out there, living her life? Was she hiding in plain sight? The unsettling truth slowly began to settle in. Jasmine's kidnapper might never face justice. She may never know why this woman had taken her, or how long it had taken her to erase every part of Jasmine's identity. But the one thing Jasmine was certain of was that this woman would never be able to take her real family away from her again. Jasmine was starting a new chapter of her life. She was finally beginning to rebuild, starting with the family she had just met. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be years of lost memories to make up for. There would be stories to share, regrets to work through, and painful truths to face. But Jasmine wasn't alone anymore. Her real family was with her now. They had spent decades waiting for her, and now they would spend the rest of their lives making up for all the years they had lost. But even with this new chapter, Jasmine still felt the weight of the past. Every day was a struggle to reconcile the two lives she had lived, the one she had been given and the one that had been taken from her. She was healing, slowly, but there was still so much to process. Her heart ached for the lost years, the pain of being raised by strangers, the stolen moments of her childhood. But in the arms of her real family, Jasmine was starting to feel whole again. As Jasmine stood there in the arms of her biological family, the echoes of her past were still too loud to ignore. The journey ahead was long, but Jasmine knew she had taken the first step. The question remained, could she ever truly heal after 53 years of being lost? And what would she find in the years to come? Would the healing ever be complete, or would there always be a part of her that felt lost? Jasmine had finally found her family, but the journey to healing was far from over. Her story was just beginning to unfold. Jasmine's reunion with her biological family is nothing short of emotional, but the impact of the kidnapper's actions is far from over. How do you think Jasmine is handling this overwhelming reunion? Do you think she can ever fully heal? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read and reply to all your comments. And hey, where are you watching from? I'd love to hear from viewers around the world. After 53 long years, Jasmine had finally returned to the family who had been waiting for her, but the healing process was only beginning. It wasn't just about reuniting with the people she had been stolen from. It was about finding a way to move forward, despite the emotional scars that would never fully fade. As Jasmine stood in the living room of her new home, surrounded by the family who had never stopped searching for her, the weight of everything she had been through began to sink in. There was love, certainly, but there was also loss, and grief, and pain. Years of missing out on moments, birthdays, anniversaries, family dinners, those years could never be fully replaced. Jasmine's biological parents were doing everything they could to make up for lost time, but there was a deep understanding that no amount of time would ever heal the wounds they'd carried for over 5 decades. And as much as they wanted to shield Jasmine from the pain, they couldn't undo the trauma of what had happened to her. The family's first few days together were filled with tears and laughter. Each moment was tinged with the bittersweet recognition that life could never go back to how it once was. Jasmine's siblings were eager to know everything about her, asking questions and telling stories about their childhood. But there was an unspoken understanding. They were all strangers to one another, trying to find their way through the rubble of the past. Jasmine, too, was trying to rebuild. She had always wondered who she really was, and now she was faced with the difficult task of reconciling the person she had become with the girl she had once been. The life she had known in Australia had shaped her, but it wasn't the life she was meant to lead. And so she worked with her family to piece together a new reality, one that felt like both an ending and a beginning. There were moments when Jasmine would catch herself smiling, laughing, feeling a sense of home for the first time in her life. But just as quickly, the weight of the years stolen from her would come crashing back. The memories of her childhood in Australia, living with people who weren't her real family, being told that her parents didn't want her, growing up with no connection to her roots, would flood her mind, and she'd feel that familiar ache of loss. It was a process. It was going to take time. But with the love of her real family surrounding her, Jasmine had a real chance to heal. Slowly, she started to let herself feel safe, to let herself believe that this family wasn't going to disappear again. This time, they were here to stay. Jasmine's journey wasn't just about finding her family. It was about discovering who she truly was, beneath all the lies and deception that had shaped her life. She wasn't just the girl who had been kidnapped in 1969. She was a woman who had lived through unimaginable pain, but also unimaginable strength. Her story represents the resilience of the human spirit. It shows how, no matter how dark the past may be, there is always hope for the future. It demonstrates the power of family, the way it can survive even the most insurmountable of obstacles. For Jasmine, the truth had come to light, but it was only the beginning of her healing journey. The family she had lost and the life she had never known would always be a part of her. And yet she had found something new, something that gave her hope for tomorrow. But the question remained, how do you move on after everything you thought you knew about your life was a lie? How do you heal after 53 years of loss, of wondering, of never knowing if your family was still out there, searching for you? As Jasmine sat with her family, finally beginning to make up for lost time, she realized that healing wasn't just about forgetting the past. It was about building a future where she could find peace, love, and a sense of belonging. And yet the lingering question remained, could she ever truly heal? Could anyone, after so much time had passed, truly recover from being lost for 53 years? Jasmine had found her family, but the journey to healing was far from over. There were still so many questions, so many unanswered pieces to this story. The path ahead would be difficult, but one thing was certain: she was no longer alone. Jasmine's story was just beginning to unfold. The truth had come to light, but what would it take for her to truly find peace? And what about her kidnapper? Would she ever be brought to justice? These questions, unanswered for so long, now hovered over Jasmine as she took the first steps toward a life that was hers, one that she could finally call her own. As the sun set over her new life, the emotional scars of her past remained, but Jasmine wasn't just surviving anymore. She was learning to live again. Before we wrap up Jasmine's incredible emotional journey, I want to give a massive thank you to all of you amazing subscribers for your support. These stories take time and effort to produce, and because of you, I can keep bringing them to life. You are the reason we're able to share these heart-wrenching, powerful stories that impact people all over the world. If Jasmine's story moved you, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who still believes that the truth can be uncovered, even after all these years. Let's keep spreading awareness about cases like hers. And don't forget to turn on that notification bell so you'll be the first to know when I upload new, compelling, true crime content. If you're craving more solved cold cases, make sure to check our previous videos. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Thank you again for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.